How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to the fantastic Transnatura Talks. We are back with a bang with our first talk of 2021, and it will certainly not be our last. Our thanks to Liam O'Sullivan for hosting. Tonight we've got two speakers, Michael Barry and John O'Byrne. Michael Barry has a new book out called An Illustrated History of the Irish Revolution 1916 to 1923, and it has over 130 specially colorized photographs. Mostly by John as well. John is fantastic at this. As well as this, Michael has over 600 other images, periodicals, and maps. So the way this is going to work is Michael's going to be given an introduction on how he found and selected the images for the first 15 minutes. Then John O'Byrne is going to outline his painstaking approach to colorization and how he gave authenticity to the historic photographs. Okay, so just one other thing, Michael Barry's other books include a trilogy, Courage Boys, We Are Winning, An Illustrated History of the 1916 Rising, The Fight for Irish Freedom, An Illustrated History of the War of Independence, and The Great Divide, An Illustrated History of the Irish Civil War. And it's a must, even if either you know nothing about this period or you're an expert in this period, it's fantastic resource. Everybody that I know who has this book raves about it. Michael, you're very, very welcome to Transnatura again.
Thanks very much, Marcus, and good evening, everybody. And hello from Rathgar in kind of central Dublin to, I believe, as far to the east as Israel and to the west in the United States. It's great to be back on Transnatura talking to you all. So as Marcus said, I've published this book and it has over 800 images, and amongst which are 130 specially colorized photographs by the maestro, John O'Byrne, who we'll be talking to later on. So I'm just essentially giving you a little flavor of how I went about getting the images, how I selected the images for the book. So, I'd begun researching for my books on the various period of the Irish Revolution well over a decade ago. And funnily enough, as it happened, I had intended that my first book was going to be more text-based with a few illustrations, but it organically developed that I had multiple images. It developed in a kind of empirical way into what has now become a kind of distinctive style of book. And the historical events are told through many images, maps and documents, and each of these has a caption. And I can tell you it's an art to try and fit some nuanced information into a very small space and try and make it intelligible and flow. And to have so many images is very unique in the publishing world. And you probably haven't seen this in other books because publishers generally don't want to spend so much time and importantly go to the expense of sourcing and printing so many photographs. And many history books might have 30, 50 images, but Andalus Press is my imprint, so I can do what I like. And so I have freedom to put in and to insert whatever I want. And so as a result, there's a total of 850 images in the latest book. So where did I get the images? Well, there are many commercial picture agencies around which have a good lot of material on Ireland. Commercial agencies like Getty or Shutterstock, but the problem is that they charge horrendous prices, anything like 100 to 100 euro per image. And when one is going for 800 images, you just couldn't conceivably afford that. So we're fortunate that we have some world-class archives in Ireland, and fortunate that the staff are kind and helpful, and fortunate that they take a reasonable attitude to either charging or, better still, not charging at all for images. So to name a few, there's the Kilmainham Jail Museum archives, worth visiting if you haven't. Then there's the very helpful Capuchin archives on Church Street. a lot of material from the Irish Revolution period, because the Capuchin friars participated very strongly on the Republican side. And then there's the National Museum of Ireland, and South Dublin City Libraries have mounted a great initiative recently and gathered a lot of images on the period, including original glass plates. And then, of course, there's the great National Photographic Archive and the National Library of Ireland. They have images on all periods of Irish history since photography began. And then there's the military archives in Colborough Barracks. If you don't know it, it's worth checking out online. Their latest great initiative was the Military Service Pensions Collection, which gives details of everything to do with the applications for pensions by the veterans of the Irish Revolution, and it's full of historical detail. As well, they have a huge collection of all kinds of artifacts, documents, periodicals, and photographs. And over the last 10 years, I've haunted the archives there for over several years, and they very helpfully brought various materials on demand, and they allowed me to take photographs of them as I went, as well as they provided photographs, digitized photographs as well. There are many other sources. One to mention, one very interesting, is the US Library of Congress. It has many Irish images. These are two examples, and it's possible to download these in high resolution, and importantly, they allow free reproduction. And I'm very indebted to the many assiduous Irish collectors, such as Conor Dullahan and Derek Jones, who were very kind to me. Others who helped include Las Fallon, who, for example, gave me that plan you see up on the left of the post-July 1922, the Civil War damage in central Dublin. And a great find was this unique photograph you see on the right, discovered by Mick O'Farrell. And it shows the wounded James Connolly on a stretcher in military captivity just after the Rising, just before he was stretchered off to Dublin Castle. And then, not to forget, the wonderful illustrated continental periodicals of the time. They gave depictions of various events during the Irish Revolution. Most, as you can see here, were fanciful and very inventive, but very interesting. And the National Library has a good deal of them, but some others I actually bought myself on Italian or French versions of eBay. Not to forget, equally, periodicals like the Illustrated London News and the graphic, both the daily and the weekly versions. Now, they unfailingly gave the pro-British and sometimes twisted view of things, but still they had great illustrations. And then on many occasions, I went and took photographs myself. This, for example, shows Portobello Bridge, the scene of the battle at the Portobello pub, see there in the background, in 1916 by the Irish Citizens Army. It was also the scene where Francis Shee Skeffington was arrested on the bridge. And I went to high places, some difficult to get to. Here are two examples. This on top is the roof of the College of Surgeons, from where the Citizens Army fought a battle with the British military in the Shelburne Hotel in the far distance there. And the lower photograph, with some difficulty, I climbed up a gully to the top of Ben Baldwin to photograph this spot where 4 anti-treaty Republicans were shot by the pro-treaty army during the Civil War, and the cross marks the spot. And just touch on a few interesting photographs of the Irish Revolution. This on the left is probably the most iconic photograph of 1916. It shows Patrick Pearse surrendering to General Lowe on Saturday, the 29th of April. And you can, on the left, you can see Elizabeth O'Farrell's feet just on the far side of Pearse. And it's a very poor quality photograph. It's probably taken by a British officer who's standing there with something like a box brownie. But then on the right, you see the front page of the Daily Sketch, which is printed a few weeks afterwards in May. And here you see that O'Farrell's legs have disappeared. There were allegations that she was airbrushed from the photograph as part of a dark plot by the British to hide that Irish women were also in revolt against the British Empire. But my take on it is a little bit simpler. I believe that a harassed sub-editor just decided to tidy up the photograph, and he took out his watercolors. There was no airbrushing in those days, and painted her legs out. But also, as you can see, he crudely adjusted the two officers' face. Lowe's face looks distinctly odd. So this is the only example. This photograph in the Daily Sketch is the only one I've been able to find showing O'Farrell's legs airbrushed out, as they say. All the others show more or less the original photograph. I'll give you another example of an airbrushing that I found. During the Easter Rising of 1916, the British used improvised armoured cars. They hurriedly borrowed lorries from Guinness Brewery, and at the Inchicore Railway Works, they fitted locomotive smoke box on the back of the lorries and armoured the front of them, and they inserted holes for rifles. And the top photograph, which you got from the Irish Railway Records Society, courtesy of Peter Rigney, it shows the Inchicore workmen proudly posing in front of their handiwork. But the bottom photograph is in the military archives. It was received around 1951. I think that's the 35th anniversary of 1916 Rising, sent by the chief mechanical engineer in CIE, presumably requested on request to the military archives. And you'll notice the redaction on this. All the workforce have been painted out. And I'm guessing times had changed in 1951. Some of those workers may still have been at Inchicore, or their families didn't want to be linked with the British effort during the 1916 rebellion. And here's another bit of fakery. A lot of you may know about this, but after a minor engagement between auxiliaries and the IRA near Ballymacallicut, which in turn is just out of Tralee, in November 1920, a week or so later, photographs appeared showing the so-called Battle of Tralee. And on the left, you can see the Illustrated London News of 27th of November, and it depicts this as the Battle of Tralee. You can see bodies lying around, and in the background, you can see the auxiliaries rounding up civilians, presumably Sinn Féiners, as they call them. But a day or two later, the Irish Independent spotted that this photograph was actually Vico Road, and you see the photograph I've taken there, showing the same spot. And there were ructions in the House of Commons when it turned out, when this deception became known. And as it turned out, it had been set up by two captains who were based in the information section of the police at Dublin Castle. And that Vico Road fakery still resonates today. it's very sticky, and a lot of people don't know about it because this is one of the stage photographs from there. And picture editors still use it as depicting a real event during the War of Independence. It's a very well composed photograph, but it's fake. And this photograph I took actually last Saturday from last Saturday's Irish Examiner, which had a very worthy supplement on the War of Independence, but the whatever picture editor was deceived on this. And this sort of thing, I don't know, it annoys me, but shouldn't be so sensitive, I guess. And now, when I was conceiving of my book on the Irish Revolution, I had some time ago come across this article in some Irish newspapers, and this is the one in the Irish Sun. It shows this image, and I saw how colorized images gave more punch, and they brought the topic alive. And I could see that the colorizer in this example had a very specific approach, and there was great attention to detail. It was painstaking handwork, and there was none of the John Hines super saturation colors that artificial intelligence colorization software churns out. And I could see in other general examples that he had a minimalist approach, that if there were defects in the original glass plate, he left them in. He didn't paste them out. And so there was authenticity there. And there was another interesting thing in that article, and it showed how the colorizer had treated this photograph of Michael Collins' coffin, looks like just outside the Pro Cathedral. And he had spotted that the Irish flag had been wrapped the wrong way around, but he colorized the flag as it actually had been placed. So as well as being an expert in colorization, I could see this man use historical detail as well. So when I began my book on the Irish Revolution, I resolved to get into contact with the man behind the colorization, or the Kildare Snapper, as the Sun had called him in its headline. So I duly met with John O'Byrne, and as it turned out, we worked together perfectly. And we didn't plan to colorize everything, but just the photographs which would benefit from them, suitable and interesting photographs. And so I was honored to incorporate his outstanding work in the book that emerged. But enough of me. Let's move on to John and let John explain his approach and how he did the work.
Thanks very much, Michael. I do appreciate it. I'll just pass you on to John O'Byrne now. I just want to give John a quick introduction. And Michael, just stop share there.
I get out of this.
Yeah. So John O'Byrne is a Kildare-based photographer. He's specializing in photo archiving, restoration, and color restoration. His work has been used in national and international media and publications, including a large presentation last November to the officer commanding of the 69th Infantry Fighting Irish in their home, the Armory in New York. His photography work too has seen him document the members and specifically veterans of the Irish Defence Forces, both at home and overseas, and that's part of a long-running documentary series. Myself, Marcus Howard, when I started Easter Rising Stories, he was more than helpful in terms of bringing colour to characters that maybe weren't as well known in the 1916 to 23 period. John, you're very, very welcome tonight, and I'm just
Thanks very much.
I'm just going to play one or two videos first, and maybe you can talk me through them, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Share the screen first, and we'll get going, hopefully. Yeah, okay, so here we go, share screen. Okay, so we can all see the video here. So John, if you just want to tell me what process you went through with this.
These videos were meant to be part of the overall PowerPoint presentation, but I did have a bit of difficulty, so thanks very much, Marcus, for sorting this out. No, this was just to give a quick overview of the process. What you're seeing here now is just a very rough job of selecting the colors for the uniform, the boots, the holsters, the small little details. Usually there will be a hell of a lot more detail and care taken when doing these, but just for this video, we said we'll just throw it in quickly. I suppose from the technology point of it, I used to use Photoshop and Lightroom when I started off first. I then, along with a friend of mine who's an absolute genius in software development, we came up with a program very similar to Microsoft Paint, which allowed us to have our own little color palette. We can pull colors from whatever source we like. We can mix our own color palettes, and we can pick the opacity of a brush to brush in. With Photoshop, I found that we have to pick every little section. If your lasso tool or your selection isn't perfect, you just can't get it. With the software we were using, if I wanted to color my own face, I can add in the oranges, the browns, the pinks, the purples, the blues, very subtly. This next one is an officer's sword drill photograph from 1927. It will just show you that when we scan an image, we will always reverse the image and see if there's any writing underneath. When we turn it back to front and we infrared everything, you'd be surprised how often you'll see a name or a date scribbled in on the back, which may have faded over the years, whether it was ink or pencil. I just thought the videos might add something a little bit more than listening to a lad from Kildare talk.
You always have time to listen to a lad from Kildare talk, and I think it's fantastic just how realistic the picture is, though, in terms of, like I said the first time I saw that, you nearly expect the man to move. It's done that well, like it's fantastic. And like I say, I think you got such a talent for this. Do you want to just start your PowerPoint there and we'll have a look at maybe?
Yeah, no problem at all. I just have it here. And it should be ready to go for you guys now.
Yeah.
Everyone see that?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, perfect. Well, hopefully this will go well now. Right, so just a bit of a layout on the talk. I'll give a very brief background to myself. I'll give a little bit of a background into my own history with archiving and restoration. 2015 was the year I started with restoration. We'll see how punchy and bold the colors were then compared to now. I'll touch on the process, a good bit of the actual color restorations. We'll touch on meeting Michael as well, color and the revolution. The most important thing I think with any of these is detail, and we'll hit on detail a fair bit in this. Like Michael mentioned before, we'll touch very lightly on the advances in photography during the War of Independence, the Civil War of 1916, and we will have a look at one or two images that were difficult to get colours for. So I'm a 26-year-old photographer from Kildare. Like Marcus had said there in the introduction, I'm a documentary photographer who is now specialising in archiving, restoration and colour restorations. And the restoration work has been going since 2015. And thankfully, I think I can say that it's getting better year by year. I think Marcus has seen the development of the work. I'm sure some of you done tonight. I think Christina, you've seen some of my work as well. Michael knows the work. It's getting better. I still haven't hit 100% happiness with my own work yet, but I'm sure we'll get there someday. So yeah, again with the background, I'm from Mertangan in County Kildare. We're only a few short miles away from the Curragh camp. And growing up, it was not that unusual to see an APC with soldiers pulling in outside the school, whether it was just to show off and show us all how they looked in their uniform. I'm not too sure, but I know it was a good old recruiting tool. A good lot of lads from school followed on and went into the Defence Forces. But also recently, and Christina actually helped me greatly on this, we found that a great granduncle of mine had been killed down in Farm 4 in 1922. And we'd always known that there was a little bit of history there, but I suppose everything added together has led me down this road of the old photographs and history, and I suppose sentimentality gets the better of me over everything. But like that, archiving and restoration, the photograph on the screen there is my own grandfather in 1939, and he was never in the army, but during the emergency he was with the LDF, and it's a photograph of him on the Curragh doing an all-army athletics day. It was photographs like this growing up when I was maybe 5 or 6 that really grabbed my interest in history, but military history as well. To see the uniforms in the background, there was just something about them that grabbed me. Again, it was the sentimentality. It's a photograph of Grandad. didn't want it to be lost, didn't want it to be destroyed. I remember holding it as a child the same way as you'd hold a baby. I was terrified. Didn't want to crease a corner, didn't want to touch it, didn't want a fingerprint on it. So from that age then, it just grew. It grew to, if I was walking by somewhere and saw an old photograph, I'd have to buy it. If it had any relation to the Irish Defence Forces, I had to buy it. This archive now of my own has 500-600 images. I know there is a box more to go through that I haven't quite archived yet. But it's just gone on and on. Each image we have, we will try and date it as specific as possible. Each image is handled as safely as possible. Every image is cleaned and stored. 2015, I was studying photography in DIT in Grangegorman, and one thing that the course didn't touch on, I'm not too sure if it's changed since then, was archiving. You did have an option to go into the National Photographic Archive, but one lecturer did see me one day in the photo lab messing around the computer with these images, and I suppose the reaction was less than positive from them. It was an abomination of a photograph, I think was the term they used. But even looking at it myself, it's 5 years on from then, or 6 years now coming on, and I'm not happy with the results of the very first photograph I did. It nearly kind of turns my stomach a little bit looking back on them. There was no real attention to detail taken. When I was thinking of it, it's a red brick building. Yeah, let's throw a reddish orange onto it. It was in an army barracks. Okay, let's throw green on the windows. Let's throw green on the gutter. The uniform is close-ish, but there's no real care taken with the detail. This is pretty much now's work compared to then. As you can see, the skin tones. The first image, the skin was just pink. The skin, there was no life in it. You look in the mirror and you don't see pink. You will see reds, purples, blues. Depending on the situation you're in and what way the light is coming, half your face could be blue, half your face could be orange, half your face could be, there's blacks, there's browns, there's every color imaginable in your face, even in your hands when you look at them. The first picture, there was no life, no depth, anything in it. The second picture, you can see the introduction of light coming around the eyes. I probably should have cropped in a bit closer, but you'll see the little bit of stubble, a little bit of that 5 o'clock shadow kind of creeping in there on him. The same with the belt. In the first image, I was thinking of kind of oxbloody leather belt. No, once you have a belt and you clean it, the light is going to hit the leather in different places. The brass is going to be a little bit darker in the areas where you couldn't quite polish it. The tunic colors themselves, completely different. The jodhpurs, I don't know where I was going with the first set when they were that kind of mustard color. I'm not too sure what it is. But the second one, it is the color of that kind of Hessian sack that you'd imagine is sitting there. The gloves as well. In the first one, there's a brown tint coming onto the gloves. I don't know why I did that. It's a ceremonial officer. He's not going to have murky colored gloves. If he has white gloves, they're white gloves. But this is just the process. On the original presentation, this was supposed to come in slide by slide. This photograph is actually Captain Blake, taken in 1928, I think, and it's in my own archive. He is, I believe, the officer who set up the military archives. I could be wrong on that. I'm fairly sure he is. But what we do is we would take the original black and white image, scan it in. If there was any imperfections on it, such as dust, they'd all be cleaned off before. The second image is, I would always start at several different points on an image. I can never just start at one point and work my way across. As you can see here, I started with 1 or 2 little blocks, each individual brick in the wall behind. Because it's a red brick wall, each brick is a different shade. It's not all the one color. It's there's tonality in every brick. There's, I suppose, an atmosphere at every brick. The cap, the great thing about uniforms is uniforms are one color. It can make a colorist's job very easy. If you're doing an Irish Army uniform from the 20s, once you have that color is going to be the same for a private, right through to the top brass. What will change is the quality of the uniforms. It'll be the same shade of dye, but it's going to react different to different uniforms. If you have a Bulls wool uniform from 1962, it could be the very same dye used as the dye in 2020 issue uniform. It's going to look completely different because the texture it's on is completely different. But as you can see here, we step through it here. Once I'm happy with the background color and that I know that the blocks are going to, or the bricks in the wall are going to look realistic enough, I will then go along and color each individual brick. I will also go along, because details is what gets me all the time. It is the mortar in between the bricks. You have to color it. It's its own separate part. It's its own part of the story, is the mortar. You can't just do it all orange or reds. Finally, the uniform, and like Captain Blake's uniform speaks for itself. It's fantastic. It's an absolute work of art. I had originally thought he had jodhpurs as the officer in the previous picture, but the tonality and everything on it didn't change. We tried adding in the kind of creamy color you'd expect, and it did not sit. Looking back through other archives and some other colorist work, and we said, yeah, they weren't jodhpurs. They were a jodhpur effect on the green uniform. But it's, I don't know, I get lost in them. I absolutely love doing these color restorations. But every little piece is, this was the video I'd seen before. And like that, Michael, when he said to me about, he rang me one day and told me about this project, and I was actually taken aback. I was sitting in my shop in Kildare at the time and got this phone call, and I said, yeah, we'd be delighted to meet you. He came down and we had coffee, and I think for another 2 weeks after, I was kind of cursing myself in a way. I didn't know what I'd taken on. I was so used to doing the single image commissions, or 3 images, 4 images for someone for Christmas. Maybe Marcus sending on 4 or 5 pictures for a presentation. That's grand. Then you're thinking 160 odd images, and you're kind of going, mother of God, nothing else is going to be done. But it was fantastic to meet him, and the images he picked, like, I mean, never mind the work I've done on the book. What a lot of people won't recognize is the time and effort that Michael went into to get those images. You can go online and type in Irish Civil War, you can type in Irish War of Independence, 1916. You're going to get the same 20, 30 images that everyone has seen. Michael, I don't know how much of his life he has put into researching these images. It's incredible. Images now that I haven't seen. There's photographs there from the Hogan collection, and I've been into UCD to see some of the Hogan stuff they have. It is phenomenal. But I can't say it enough, the time and effort that Michael went to, and the resources that he found, it's second to none. And I don't think he'll ever be given the credit for that. That especially the books he's done, the research behind all those books to get images, it's incredible. So moving on then to Colorizing Revolution, it was mind blowing the amount of images that Michael got for me. And like you said before, we weren't going to color every image, because colorizing is a subtle thing. It's very easy to overdo it, and it's very easy to, if we'd done the entire book in color images, it wouldn't have had the same impact. I myself love the original photographs. There's something about them, there's a timelessness, they are the true article. What I see about the color photographs is they're more of a historical tool, educational tool. Especially, I suppose, some of the work I had done was for primary schools and secondary schools, getting kids to see that something that happened 100 years ago wasn't that far away from today if they see it in color. But what we found with this was all the images Michael found, 70% of them fantastic, glass plate images, they are amazing. Some of them, the old box brownie photographs, they are brilliant, but the quality just isn't there. They're on a different type of format, they're on a different film. As you can see here, the Irish Volunteers receiving the flag from Pearse in 1915. Fantastic image. Uniform detail is brilliant, but it does not have the clarity or the file size, I suppose, at the time behind it as the British troops on the bridge. Two completely different cameras, two completely different formats of cameras. The image on the left of the British uniforms, you could zoom in on that all day long on the computer. You could go right into the detail, the spokes and the wheels. It is phenomenal. The volunteers, you can zoom in, you know they're Irish Volunteers uniform, but you cannot see the cap badge detail. You cannot see some of the buckles on the bandoliers. We're very lucky that throughout, like Michael had said, the development, and I'll touch on the development of photography a little bit later on it, but the development of cameras and the development of photographers becoming embedded in events throughout the revolution, it led to images like these. You can see on the left, the original image without being touched at all is superb. Like a De Valera standing outside, I think it's Ennis Courthouse. Slipped my mind now exactly where it was, but it's a fantastic image. No press photographer today could give out about this image. You have the main character dead center and crystal clear. You have the tricolours in the background. You have the member of the clergy in front, kind of not too sure if he should be there or not. But it's how sharp everything was then. The professional photographers becoming embedded made a huge, huge difference to what we can see nowadays. The colour on that image, I think personally, I love it. It came together very well. It was one of those images where when it was finished, I was happy with it. Everything just seemed to work out well in it. The skin tonality, it's perfect, but I can't take credit for that. It's all down to the original photographer. I had to do very little touch-up work on that image other than add the colour. As I said before, detail, detail, detail. Every little piece of work I do is detail, detail, detail. Probably be the death of me one of these days with OCD and detail. As you can see here, De Valera, I had to zoom in on his face to do it. It's not the clearest of photographs I've ever worked on. There was obviously a little delay in the shutter going off, and we had left with a small little bit of shake, but it's the detail in the headdress. It's phenomenal. Colouring that is an absolute nightmare. Because the image is not perfectly sharp and we're dealing with feathers, how do you colour feathers? Same with Markovich, fantastic image. When you zoom in, again, there's almost a feather detail in the hat. How do you colour that without overdoing it? And it's just very, very precise little brush strokes, the same as watching someone paint. Although I'm lucky, if I make a mistake, I can just hit Control-Z and I can go back out of it. But it's all tiny brush strokes. De Valera's headdress, it's brush strokes of red. On top of that again, there's brush strokes of brown. On top of that again, there's brush strokes of orange to try and get that colour. You're sitting researching Native American headdresses to see exactly what colour red they'd use or what colour green if it was in it. And I could not mix a colour to suit it. So I had to go with a layer of red, a little bit of orange on top of it, a little bit of brown on top of that again, and then maybe a bit of orange again on top of that. It's layers and layers of colour. Again, details. And again, this was supposed to come in as a bit of an animation, but it didn't work out for me. The overall shot grabs you. But it's once you look into the photograph, everything comes alive. It's the water. It's the Liffey. The Liffey isn't blue. It's orange, sorry, it's greens, it's blues, it's blacks, it's browns. It's the streetscape. Again, the red brick buildings, 90% of them, they're not red, they're not orange. There's a wash, there's every single one of them is individual. Every brick in that street is individual. And I suppose in a weird way, you kind of have to give each brick its own bit of respect. It was there at the time, you have to give it what it deserves. The same as the sky. When you see the explosion, it's not just black, it's not browns, it's bits of everything. And you have to remember then it was dust, it was fire, it was everything at the one time. Trying to colour it, again, nightmare, layers and layers of stuff. The very same as the streetscape in front. You have shop fronts. As someone who had a shop myself, you're proud of your shop front. If you saw that photograph in 1920s, you would want to see your shop front in it. What can I do today for them? I'm not too sure if that shop was red. I'm not too sure if that shop was brown or if it was green. But I gave it my best attempt to give a true representation of it. I might have tried brown, I might have tried red on different shop fronts that didn't work. I will look at each and every individual aspect of a photograph to try and bring it to life. The same here, panoramic shots, which were something I'd never seen before from the period. And Michael, thanks very much for finding them. They were fantastic. Like even this image here, it's a muggy, burnt out barracks. There's not much life in the photograph. You could have done it all with just browns. And yes, there's a lot of browns and greys in it, but it's the puddle detail in front, the reflection of the sky in it, the small little details, the red brick chimney stacks, the bits of timber and metal that are in the foreground there in front of the main barrack building. There's greens, there's browns, there's a hell of a lot more than just greys. And it was a really atmospheric shot. And the same here with, I think it's O'Connell Street in Limerick. It's fantastic. I could have not bothered with the signs in the window and just left them as a cream color. You mightn't even notice that I colored them when you're looking at the book, but they were there at the time. The same as over the door. You can't really make out the shop name, but because we could see it in the sign that it's McBurney's or, yeah, McBurney's, like, it's there, you have to color it. You can't forget it. Everything that's in there is a historical source. For the next generation coming on, they might know that the old street signs were green. You might have some county councils that will remove the old green shop or the green street signs. We know they're green from the historical sources there. They were green as well. We'll make them green. It's detail, detail, detail. Same the Rolls-Royce armored car. Everyone will see it now and know that it's battleship grey from its 1940s paint, the Stephen Amon. We see the customs house here, and like, what an image. The detail on it, the rivets, the decals up on the turret with the National Army crest. Like, in the black and white image, you could miss out on that. And a lot of people do. It's small, subtle details. Yes, I colored it green, but it's not punchy green. It's not a freshly washed. It's in the middle of a civil war. Doesn't matter whether it's today, doesn't matter whether it's 100 years ago. They're not going to stop and wash a car for a photograph. There's going to be dust, there's going to be dirt. As you can see, there's dents on the fenders in the front of them. But it's the details in it again. It's the small little bit of blue on the light. It's the small little hints of brass where brass screws and bolts will come through. It's everything. Nothing is clean in war, I suppose. If you have a belt, it's not going to be a perfectly shiny belt. If you have a green tunic on you, it's not going to stay perfectly green. You're going to get dust, you're going to get debris, you're going to get everything. It's, again, details. And this is supposed to come in again as a bit of an animation. But what I've noticed is I've tried one or two of those colorizing apps just to see how they work and the artificial intelligence. Blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind how one click on some of them. I think My Ancestry has a link to one of them, or another crowd. Amazing work, but it just doesn't hit the detail factor for me. If I wanted a quick job myself, just have a quick look and I go, yeah, you might get skin tones, but what it can't do is it can't do individual elements. It can't jump from one man to the next man. It can't do skin tones across all. Once you click convert, it will give you everything. It doesn't take, I suppose I'm zooming in here on the screen, I'm not too sure if it's happening for everyone else, but it won't do the individual buttons, the buckles, the little lanyards that are a complete different color to a uniform and tunic. It's the small little pieces. And I'm sure with time, I'll be put out of a job by apps, but until that day comes, I hope to God it's not for another while yet, but I'm fairly sure that all these apps and all the I suppose, colorifying websites out there, they're going to catch up. And I suppose it's only with people using them, and God, I'd encourage all of you to use them. The more images you put onto them, the more of a database it can build up for uniforms, for faces, for any detail. It's going to be amazing what we see in the next couple of years. But right at this minute, it's not doing the full job for me. As we mentioned earlier, the different types of cameras. We have your box brownie. Every family at some stage has had a box brownie, whether it was back in the 1910s or up to the 70s. A box brownie was in every house in Ireland, I think, at one stage. Moving on to I suppose, the press camera and the professional studio cameras at the time. These glass plate cameras, absolutely phenomenal. The detail and, I suppose, range that they can collect is fantastic. Just to give a quick overview, a photograph from 1916, which I'm sure every one of you has seen, inside the GPO, not taken by a professional photographer, just your amateur photographer, which is a term I hate. I hate saying amateur photographer. If you're a photographer, you're a photographer. If you have a camera, you have a camera. But just for the context of the talk, I would have said amateur and professional. Amateur camera, I suppose, with the box brownie type, very small file size. No matter how much you scan it or how large you'll scan that, it's not going to increase the detail that's in it. That's all we're going to get from it. It wouldn't have had a high ISO range to take in light. It was taken in darker settings. We move on to the Civil War photograph of, it is Sean McGowan, keep on forgetting his name, but like, what a fantastic photograph. Like, that is set up perfectly. Definitely a posed photograph to a degree. It's probably standing at the window. Photographer like Hogan, I'm not too sure if it was Hogan who took that photograph, but definitely would have said to him, hey, look, the way you were looking there, the light coming in on his face, it's just catching the brim of his cap, but it's catching it enough that the light still hits his eyes, his nose, his cheek. It's perfect. Massive difference. And we're only talking a couple of years in between the two photographs, but just the difference between, and like I'm saying here now, it's not only the cameras and the photograph themselves, but the processes that those images would have gone through after. So the washing, the adding of highlights and shadows, it's fantastic. But what saved, I think, a lot of the professional photographs is they weren't put into a USA biscuit tin under the bed in grannies. They were kept, they were archived properly. These photographs that Jim or Mary took on the street, they might have never been developed, and those rolls of film, like many things in Ireland, would have been thrown in the bin over the years. We could have lost countless images from inside the GPO. We don't know. If Hogan or one of the other professional photographers had been inside it, wow, those images would be kept absolutely pristine. They'd be almost in hermetically sealed boxes at this stage. But we don't know what has been shot and lost over the years because they weren't professionals or the money wasn't there to do it. But thank God the collections that are available to us, like the Capuchin Archives and the few others that were there that Michael mentioned earlier on, Kilmainham and others, their handling of things in the military archives, the detail that they go into with what they have is fantastic. Certain images, and this is what a lot of people will ask me about, how do I know a color and how do I pick a color? It's a lot of it is trial and error, and I can't lie about that. We don't know colors of everything. Research is what will get results. As you can see, the photograph here, there's not an awful lot of detail in the photograph once you go past the tank. There's signs in the background, there's people in the background. We can't see that. I couldn't tell you whether that's an enamel sign hanging off the side for Lions Gold Blend or whether it's Players Navy Cut. Looking at the shapes of signs, yeah, I've spent hours and hours online researching old enamel shop signs. Some photographs, I see them now and I'll know by the shape of it going, oh, that's a Sweet Afton sign, or oh, that's a Player sign. But a lot of them you have to take trial and error into it. The T signs, you're looking at it. I think in that image I tried blue and white, a royal blue on it and sort of white porcelain. It didn't work. The red and the kind of cream, it just flew off. It took it from there. The same as the Miller sign. It was the opposite way around. But when you look at the images from the time, or you look at items from the time, we didn't have a great variety of color to be used in the likes of enamel processing and even shop fronts. It was your lead-based paints. It was your reds, your greens, your blues, your oranges, maybe one or two kind of very dark purpley colors. But you were kind of limited enough when it came to shop fronts, which makes the work today easy enough. But it's picking the right colors. The Egan sign over the Skeffington, I could have done that any 100 ways with colors. You could mix it around. But once I sat down with that green and that almost gold leafing effect, it just worked. I did try a brown on it to make a timber sign. It just didn't give, I don't know whether it was the respect to the sign or to the craft of the sign maker of the time, but it just worked. But like that, every streetscape nearly kills me. It's every brick, every sign, every window, every curtain, every pane of glass has to get the little bit of light hitting it, the little shade of blue. Really lost myself there. It's the little washes, everything, like I said, detail. And I'm sorry now with this, I've kind of lost myself talking away there. I did have it all written out and I was going to go perfect point by point. I'm not going to lie, nervous as hell before coming on. But I have to say, Michael, thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this project. It was fantastic to work with. You were fantastic to work with. The images you picked were amazing. And if there's ever a project I can work with you in the future, geez, I'd be happy to do it. And Marcus, yourself, you've been, I think, my longest follower. You've given me more work over the years than I could care to imagine. But no, it's to the likes of yourselves, I wouldn't be in the position I am today, colouring with anything at all. It's amazing what the support does. At the start there for yourself with the Easter Rising stories, it was enough to get my initial Facebook page off the ground. It got me from the 20 people following me to, thanks to yourself, 100 people this month, another 100 people this month. It's fantastic. And thanks very much. And it's not forgotten everything that you've done over the years to boost my own profile. And thanks very much.
Absolute pleasure, John. I mean, I have to say, you know, and I've said it in the comments, like, I think you've raised the bar in terms of doing this. You have actually turned it into an art form. And one of the things that I'm blown away with, and I think a number of people in the comments, which you'll read out, are blown away with, is the process you go through. You know, even the fact you're thinking of, oh, how does the light reflect off the belt? You know, what kind of coloring will I give to the shop front? Like, you wouldn't think of that when you're the person buying it or looking at it for the first time. The amount of thought that goes into what you do is incredible. So let's just go through what some people have said. Christina McMullen, wow. Okay, and I think she speaks on behalf of everybody. Gavin, really excellent stuff, John. John Tynan, subtle soft coloring, looks fab. Is there a bit of feedback there? Oh. Okay. Well, let's see, anything else? Eddie Bohan, I've just been writing a major piece on the photo of the IRA man shot by the Black and Tans on Parnell Square near Vaughan's Hotel. That picture has been used as a book front. It covers as a real photo, but it's from a 1926 film called Irish Destiny, I think. Michael or John, would you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry about that.
No problem. Let's see.
I'm not sure what he's referring to there.
You know the photo of, I think it was that you were saying that was like the propaganda photo, I think, of the Black and Tans holding up the guy with his hands up.
I know that's done in Vico Road.
Yeah. You've actually gone into detail in that in your book, actually.
Yeah.
David Freeman, how can you be sure of the accuracy of your choice of color?
Like that, David, it's trial and error. A lot of trial and error. With clothing, aside from military photographs, I've had to study and research everything from architecture to fashion. Like, I'm fairly sure over the years I've looked at fashion magazines from the 20s with the little sketches, the kind of World War I postcards of the sweetheart postcards. You're looking at the colors of the dresses that loved ones would be sending to the front, and you're kind of going, right, they didn't have pure white dresses. They didn't have very vividly, there was yellows, there was blues, but a lot of it is, after a couple of years doing it, you kind of start to see shades of gray as color, if that makes any sense. I'll color skin tone because I know the basic colors that'll be in it. Off that, then I'd almost start seeing the lighter shades as, well, light is, the lighter the shade, you're getting towards white, the darker the shade, you're getting more towards blacks. Everything in between then is, I suppose, like that is trial and error. Like for a dress or for clothes, for a car, I can try 5 or 6 different colors for each one. Some of them don't work. Sometimes it's a pain in my head that you get 2 colors that work perfect and you can't differentiate between it, whether it's going to be brown or whether it's going to be green. And like that, I don't think that there's anyone who's doing it. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at doing it, but I don't think there's anyone there who, unless we were living and took that photograph ourselves with our own eyes, we're never going to know the exact colors. And I think even the apps that are coming out, they're going to develop and get better, but no one can give a definite yes that that person's eyes were green with a hint of brown while wearing a yellow sweater sitting on a blue box. We're never going to see all that.
Hugh has asked, how do you clean the photos before scanning?
Well, it depends on the photograph. Some photographs we're very lucky just to be able to use a cloth wipe. Nothing special, nothing fancy. We will use a little pipette just to blow off bits beforehand. A lot of photographs I get in, they're already damaged. The initial layers on the top have broken away. They're cracked, they're broken. When it comes to that, I do not touch them at all. I'm just terrified that the initial layer on top has been broken. I do not want the damage to seep down into the paper backing. I will scan it and do most of the cleaning work online or on computer. If a photograph hasn't been, I suppose, torn, or if the top layer hasn't been broken through, a very light cottony dry wipe, nothing that will shed, nothing that will leave elements behind itself. But if you're ever going to clean a photograph, do like it says on tins. Try the very smallest little corner, because if you start on your grandfather's face or your grandmother's face to clean it, if there's something wrong with the paper it's been printed on or the ink that was used at the time, you are going to lose granddad's face. You're going to lose granny's face. And once they're gone, doing restoration work, I can't, or anyone who's doing it, we can't just put the face back. Unless we have something to work with or another photograph, we can try and transcribe it across. If you lose the element of a photograph, you're wiping away history.
Okay. Christina McMullen has said that she's in complete awe of your work, John. Your attention to detail is absolutely amazing. And Colin Burke, absolutely stunning artwork, John. Never realized or even thought about the detail involved. What was it? John Tynan has asked, was one of those photos Captain Blake from the Ballyturn ambush of May 1921?
I know it is Captain Blake. It was the photograph in the 4 sequences. I'm not too sure on Captain Blake's own records. I've just been told lately that the photograph that was the Captain Blake was at the military archives. So if that's the same man,
the Ballyturn ambush was the Captain Blake was a British military officer who was killed, if I recall. So I presume it's totally different.
What was this? I think both Michael and John's passions, they really do complement each other. You're like John Lennon and McCartney, but you can argue over which one's John Lennon and which one's Paul McCartney. What ignited your passion in terms of getting it so perfect?
Of making the colours perfect, does it?
Yeah.
I don't know, it's, I suppose, OCD. I'd nearly call it CDO, just that the letters are in the right order. I can't settle for, I love intricate detail. And it's not just in photography or in restoration. I'm always detailed. In school, used to drive the teachers mad. My writing would be tiny. I would nearly fit 2 lines into a line. Just love everything in miniature. Building Airfix models as a kid. Everything small and detailed. Brilliant. My favorite picture I've ever colored is the mounted officer, the Blue Hussars, sitting up in his dress uniform, and it's a fantastic image. But what got me was the braiding detail and how sharp it is. 7 hours staring at a screen trying to get little gold braids in. Didn't bother me one bit. It just detail, detail, detail.
Jim Dolan has said, Michael, that he's very impressed by your respect for the original photos, both the Box Brainy and the Carl Zeiss. Let's see, John Tynan, the original film of the Box Brainies had mighty quality. Is clarity of original photos always the most important thing?
No.
That's for both of you, actually. That's for Michael as well.
No, the clarity isn't, even for colorizing, it wouldn't be. It's, every single photograph is its own unique story. And every story is a piece of history.
Yeah. And
it doesn't matter whether, if I was in the volunteers in 1915 and my family had money to get a portrait photograph of me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether I was in a portrait and got a glass plate negative photograph of me, or the brother had a box brownie and took a photograph. What I meant with the quality wise was for reproductions today.
Yeah.
We can scan the glass plate negative to the same degree as a box brownie negative.
Okay.
But it's the detail that's etched within the glass. It's that detail that was captured in that initial split-second photograph. It was, I suppose, today, if you had a disposable camera and a Canon or Nikon, actually phones and cameras today, every phone is a camera. Click, I'll take the same picture on a Canon camera. We'll both capture the exact same thing. I can print your phone photograph, my camera photograph. It'll be the same thing. But if I go to make a billboard advertisement, I'm not going to be able to use your phone photograph to the same degree as I can use the Canon photograph.
Yeah.
It's the small little story behind it. It's the exact same thing. It's not one's more important than the other, or one is greater than the other. It's just the file size, really, or the, I suppose, yeah.
I find the same thing with Michael, actually. Michael, like, I know for yourself, when you want to find a photo to accompany what you're going to write about, my God, you're like a terrier going for the right picture. Because I remember there's an issue with a picture about Ashtown as well, and you're trying to find a very rare one I got, I think, of somebody, couldn't remember who. But you were so good. In terms of you picking pictures, is the clarity of the original photos the important thing, or what?
Well, first of all, I have the particular episode that I'm trying to illustrate, of course, and then I look for the best photographs. But then sometimes there are only appalling photographs available, and sometimes you do a bit of smoke and mirrors. If you haven't got much, I put in a map for Ashton, if you remember, which tells the story as well. But anyway, there's just one thing which occurred to me when John was talking about the colors there and the accuracy of colors. And I just want to remind John, there was one thing which probably drove us bananas, and we had lots of exchanges about this. Was the auxiliaries. The auxiliaries, when they came, were kitted out with khaki uniforms, and they seemed to bring along their army overcoats as well. And then over time, as the RSE dark greeny blue uniform became available, they were kitted out in that. And then their, Glengarries and Tam O'Shanters changed as well. And there are loads of photographs with sort of variegated in black and white colors. And it was a devil to figure out what colors they had. And John, if I remember the photograph of the auxiliaries on the tug in Cork when they were bringing home Terence McSweeney's copy, they'd intercepted it. It was a devil to try and figure out what colors. But I think you probably have the knack that you kind of inherently know the basic color behind.
Yeah, that photograph of the auxiliaries in the tug, that was a nightmare of an image, because of exactly what you said there. It was the mix of uniforms. In a way, a photograph of a group of Civil War soldiers in Ireland, it's your easiest photograph to do. It's green uniforms, brown leather, skin tones, brass buttons and cap badges. That's it. There's no individual unit flash markings. There's no, you might have an officer with maybe blue for rank markings. There's not much in it. When it comes to the British uniforms, and like that, especially the auxiliaries, at that period when they were changing over, we had possibly 3 or 4 possible different colors for every tunic, for every jacket. It just had to be which period of the changeover in uniform was it, or which jacket was that guy wearing that one day. It was a nightmare of an image to work on.
Emvin Milsud has said, incredible work and very impressed on the detail you went into. As a photographer, I've had the opportunity to colour and touch up a couple of old photos, but this takes it to a whole new level. Marianne Mayer, as someone who works with an annual publication for our local parish, you get an amount of photos both old and new. I have to say I love the old black and white photos, but it's great to see the ability to add colour to them. Like you say, it brings the photo to life. But I got to say, by comparisons to photos taken today, the old photos were so much better quality. Can I just ask, in regards to the colouring of these photos, are you colouring them from a scanned copy, or are the copies downloaded from online?
Either or. For me, it makes, if someone's looking for an image to be done, and like that with Michael, I didn't scan any of the images in the book. They were all sent online in file size. I suppose if someone has an image and can't scan it, yes, we can scan images there, which is no problem at all. But if someone has an image, even a quick photograph of an image to get a quick idea of a colour restoration, all you have to do is send it on, email it in. We don't need to take the original off you. If you can get a scan, that's amazing.
Okay. Let's see. Donna Lyons, your passion and attention to detail in your work is a breath of fresh air, always in awe. Let's see, John Tynan, the amazing artifacts and the time held in Collins Barracks give a great reference for the colour of a wide range of topics. Marianne, John, that was fantastic. Well done. Keep up the great work. Deirdre Colgan, you did well. Hilary, are the men dancing a set on the boat? You know, the Free State Army, that was the Vision of Cork, wasn't it? Or?
They are indeed, yeah. Yeah, and I think actually in that image, there's guys sitting on a field gun playing the squeeze box. If you go into the detail of it, I think actually I can just see if I can pull up that one screen for you, Marcus.
Yeah, no problem. I just keep reading out messages when you're doing
it.
Yeah. Excellent work, John. Well done. Do you have an email address or contact number or even a Facebook page for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I suppose I can give out the personal email address there. It's John O'Byrne, all lowercase.
John O'Byrne, yeah.
.Ellistown, ELLIS town at Gmail.
So just say that once more.
John O'Byrne.
Yeah.
.Ellistown.
Yeah.
ELLIS town.
Yeah.
At gmail.com.
No problem. And we can post it underneath the video when it goes up as well. Oh, you're just showing us here, is it? This is the picture, yeah, we were saying about.
It's very poignant photograph of it. These are young men about to go into war when they land at Cork. And Marcus, the other thing from a Dundalk point of view, that 18-pounder that the fellow with the squeeze box is sitting up on it, it has 2 signs scribbled on it. The forecourts, it was an action of the forecourts, and it also has somewhere underneath all that is Dundalk. It was an action in this
Was it not Drogheda? No, it's Drogheda, I think it is.
Sorry, Drogheda, I beg your pardon.
That's
Millmount.
okay, because the dog, it's like Celtic and Rangers, do you know what I mean?
Is it? Sorry, I must apologize there.
Going to get in so much trouble with people from Drogheda now. Let's see. No, but you're right, though. The detail that you can spot in that picture in particular is amazing. Let's see. Excellent work, John, says Mark O'Brien. Yeah. Jim Dolan, well done, John. Love to meet up with you sometime. I've more than a passing interest in particular photos you showed tonight. Christina, it's your incredible attention to detail that brings the subjects to life. Total respect and passion from you is what makes your work so fantastic. Thank you for all you and Michael have done, and congratulations to both of you on a wonderful book that I will have in my library forever. And I agree. Anyone that I know that's got this book is just blown away by it. I think people need to hold it in their hands, just see, wow, there's that many images and that much color images in it, as well as attention to detail that really, really makes it pop. Mo Fraser, brilliant. So, and also John's Facebook page, what's it, old Irish photos, is it, John?
Yeah, I was using that one, and I'll probably will be going back to using that one. It's old Irish and world photos in color.
Okay.
But I can send John a link there to it. Yeah,
we can stick it underneath the video when it goes up on Trasnet here. Cormac McDonald, that was good, well done. It was a very interesting talk tonight, and I have enjoyed it. Oh yeah, Christina has posted your Facebook page there as well, NCJOB Photography as well. Yeah, Joe Healy, hi John, what software do you use now for the color palette? You mentioned it was similar to Microsoft Paint, or are you giving away your secrets?
Yeah, won't be giving away the secrets yet to that one. No, but at the same time, there is times there where I will go on and I will use Photoshop. That's how I got started doing it, was Photoshop. Literally, there was no way of learning other than YouTube videos and learning how to colorize photographs through Photoshop. It took time. It was days there where I would have thrown the computer screen out the window because it wasn't working, but it does pay off.
Okay. Mike Jackson, very interesting, and thank you for the talk. Finola Finley, what a brilliant collaboration between Michael and John. So impressive and brings everything to life in such an immediate way. Thank you. Marie Cronin, thank you for a very interesting talk. James Duffy, brilliant, great research and work. Thank you for sharing. One thought to thank, what was it doing on the Irish streets? Was it World War I only? Yeah, it's a good question. Frank Moran, fascinating, great work. Patricia Brewster, brilliant, thank you. So interesting to see the work it takes to create this. We'll enjoy the book even more now. Let's see. How do you go about selecting the color, John? Emvin's asking.
Again, for say if it's a photograph of a car, if I'm dealing with a photograph from any period of time, I'll have to look at what colors were available at the time. If it's a Ford Model T, it's handy. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. If it's a military vehicle, it's going to be your khakis, your greens. A good lot of references lately are newer films. If it's a military image you're doing, and if it's a First World War image, the likes of 1917 and films that have come out in recent years, they've gone to a lot of detail with their set designs, with their uniforms, with their dress in the sets. Yeah. I would pause, if you can find a film from the time period of the photograph that you're coloring, you can get a lot of references.
Yeah.
You can get a film, say even Pearl Harbor, when they're starting off that film and it's two kids playing in a barn in America, you're kind of going, grand, pause it. It's going to be late 20s, early 30s America. There's inside the barn. What's inside in the barn? It's an old car. There's a couple of lamps hanging up. There's bits of metal rusting away in the shed. It'll give you the color palette for that time period. Yeah. It'll give you the clothes they're wearing. It'll give you the blue and white stripes. But it'll give you the shade of blue. It'll give you the shade of denim. It'll give you the Hessian sacks. It'll give everything like that. Other than that, it's just research. And I've often spent hours and hours just staring at a computer screen, staring at books. If there's an image from a time, I will look at it. Then again, OCD helps as well with that. It's just time.
Okay. Jim Dolan, you're so correct about the color. David Friedman, can this process be used for movies or even videos?
Yeah, and I've worked on one or two with early footage of Michael Collins in, I think it's Colourising Barracks, not too sure. No, Portobello Barracks possibly. Each film has to be broken down into images. So for every, depending on the speed of the shutter speed of the video camera at the time, it'll be broken down into each and every individual frame. And I know there was a film done in England of troops from World War One. I think They Shall Not Grow Old, or They Shall Grow.
Peter Jackson's film. That's right.
Yes, and like that's phenomenal. They colored every individual film scene in it. It's incredible. They went to the level of detail of getting in actors to do sound voiceovers for it, where they would lip read the conversation, maybe have background noise going. But yeah, it is something, and I've seen a couple of guys in Ireland do it with small little clips or make animations of photographs. But yeah, I can see, it's not that long ago that the likes of History Channel would have had World War II in colour. Yeah. And it would have been just a very washed out view of khaki uniforms against grey uniforms, or that's only getting better and better, and it won't be too long until someone does it for here, if not working on it already, would be any footage of the Civil War in colour. And I have seen one or two clips online of the Civil War in Ireland in colour, and it'll be fantastic when it's done.
Well, I will. Mo Fraser, Adobe's Colorize is improving with each update. Deirdre Colgan, your work is the calling. A lot of people agree with that. And absolutely, Jim Dolan says less is more. I'd agree. Eden Telelovich, thanks a lot for this grand presentation and your brilliant work, Brillo. Finola Finley, do you need to have an original printer? Can you work from a digital image?
Either or, digital image or original image.
Okay. And Ken Mooney, I've had John with me on a few gigs and he covered for me on a number of times in his early days. John, you have just excelled in your profession and I look up to you on your work. Thank you for your work and being an inspiration. And Jim Dolan, was that PJ Halley and the Horse and the Blue Hussars?
I think it was indeed, yes, yeah. Outside McKee Barracks. Great photograph.
Deirdre Colgan, you're into the spirit world, John. Fair play. Mo, it's a depth in each image. Marianne Mayer, thanks for the clarity in relation to the difference of a photo taken on the camera versus a photo taken on the phone. It's been an argument of mine with many people over the years. Thanks again for the talk. Emma O'Byrne, what a fantastic insight into all the work involved in producing this. Brendan Nevin, fantastic work. Michael and John, how long does each recolor take? That's a good question.
Depends on the image. Yeah. There's portrait images there which can take me 40 minutes to an hour, maybe a bit longer, depending on, I suppose, what's in it. There's a photograph of Martin Savage, volunteer in 1919. Was it? No, he was killed in 1919, I think. It was a portrait shot of him in volunteer's uniform. Great photograph. It took maybe 45 minutes. It was very simple. It was a sharp image of the face. The skin tones went in really well. The hair color went in very quick. The tunic was colored within 10 minutes. It just one of those images that took the color really well and quick. Other images can take weeks. Okay. The photograph was presented to the 69th Infantry in New York, took about 2 months. It was a panoramic image from 1916, 1917, and yeah, it was just incredibly detailed, but about 2 months work on it.
Okay, nearly there, folks. Emma O'Byrne, the finished article. John T. Mann, yeah, we've given the email already, John, so we'll also post it underneath the video. Jim Dolan, the book is fantastic, love it. Deirdre Colgan, you're a lovely lad, John. That's Deirdre. Paul Bren, I'm trying to colorize photos in the past. I found getting the eyes look right the hardest thing to do. Pauline, awesome. Thanks for all your information. Mo Fraser, 24 frames per second. Wow. Hugh, excellent presentation and Q&A. Thanks very much. And Jim Dolan, brilliant lecture. Learned a lot here tonight. His godfather is PJ Halley, so yeah. And DJ, thanks very much for taking the time for the presentation and the book. Looks like a massive undertaking. Well done. Michael, do you just want to say where you can get the book?
Oh, presumably, I don't know what's happening to bookshops in Ireland now, but online, books.ie, easons.com and bookdepository.com com, I guess, and a few others too.
No problem. And we'll post them underneath the video as well when it goes up. Listen, folks, we told you we'd be back with a bang. We literally are with Colorizing the Revolution. First talk back at Trans Interior 2021, and there'll be plenty more. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we shall see you next time. All the best.